Welcome, everybody. This is In Conversations with Chana. I'm Chana Weisberg, editor of thejewishwoman.org. We thought in honor of Gimel Tammuz, we would do a special kind of interview recordings with some of the staff from Chabad.org. What's the why? What makes them tick? What makes them wake up every morning and actually come to work and be a part of Chabad.org? I'm joined today with Yaakov Ort, who is the editor of the news site on Chabad.org. Welcome, Yaakov. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chana. I think it's a delight to be here.
Thank you. So, Yaakov, why don't you start with, before we get into your work at Chabad.org, and let's start a little bit with you. Tell us a little about yourself, about your journey, about how you got to the Rebbe, about how you got to observant Judaism. Give us a little intro about the man behind that name, Yaakov Ort, that we see on so many articles on Chabad.org.
Okay, well, I grew up in the Sheepshead Bay section of Brooklyn, and here I am speaking to you from the center of Jerusalem, Israel.
Wow.
And so when you talk about transitions, how I got from there to here is really a pretty amazing journey for me.
It is amazing.
And I grew up in a secular Jewish family. My dad was a veteran of World War II. Most of the people that I knew when I was growing up were Jewish in Brooklyn, but throughout my entire childhood and through my teenage years and into college even, I never knew a single Orthodox Jewish person. We didn't cross paths. We didn't have anything. There was nothing negative about it. I just didn't have anything to do with them. And people were in the black hats and the white shirts and everything like that, and with the payas and the beards. It was like, okay, they're Jews, but no interaction whatsoever.
So it's interesting because you grew up in New York, so it's
right.
There's a lot of religious Jews there, but you didn't interact with them at all, right?
Right, and and you see the same thing playing out here in Israel, where a person can be a religious Jew and never come in real contact with a secular Jew, and vice versa. It's not because of any enmity or anything like that. It's just that, okay, you've got your thing, I've got my thing, and they're different things. So my thing was so my thing was just like being a, nice Jewish college-bound kid in Brooklyn. I think like 90% of the graduating class of my high school went on to college. I went to Columbia University in New York, got in there. And this was in 1969, which was sort of like the height of like political turmoil and hippies and everything like that. And I was right in the middle of that, and this is an important part of my journey that, I don't want to put any labels on what I was in college, but, I was definitely a person like a lot of my friends who really believed that there needed to be something different. There needed to be something more. Some of the people called it the dawning of the age of Aquarius, or whatever it was, that we really felt that we were poised that something different was happening in the world. Something much better was happening in the world.
So there was a certain idealism, a certain quest for more, for meaning.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And, so, what happened was a long personal family story, but, I didn't have a scholarship, and problems came up with tuition, and I basically needed a job. So I was looking through the Sunday New York Times for a job, and I saw an ad to be an office boy at the New York Times. Okay, so I answered the ad. I figured, okay, I'll work and I'll go to school. And so I applied for the job at the New York Times. This is in April of 1971.
Mm-hmm.
And really, the interviewer really liked me, and she said, "Well, can you start? We need to do a background check on you. Can you start next week?" And I said, "Fine." And she didn't tell me this when I showed up at work. You're going to be an office boy. It turned out that my personal boss was the chairman and publisher of the Times, Arthur Oak Sulzberg, and I was his personal gopher.
Oh, wow.
And in the executive offices, and got to like everybody, and everybody liked me. And then after a year, they asked me, "Do you want to go to the business side? Do you want to go to the news side?" And the news side seemed a little bit more interesting, or a lot more interesting. So I said, "Okay, news," but I didn't have any particular desire to get into journalism. But that's where fate took me. That's where Hashgacha now understand to be Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence.
Took
Took
you
me,
there.
and I moved in with roommates on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and basically lived the life of a young professional in his early 20s, and whatever idealism I had in college was gone, just gone. It just, and I just got into this whole culture of, he who died, that life is a game, and he or she who dies with the most toys wins the game.
Wins the
That's the
game.
whole thing. you
So it was
know
a so it was a very materialistic kind of life,
Very
just
materialistic, very get ahead,
climbing the career
very
ladder.
climb, very, yeah, climbing but not just climbing the career matter as much as just like getting the most stuff, having the most fun.
Mm-hmm.
Even people who were like obsessed with their careers, even that was, well, no, you're not getting it right.
Mm.
You're supposed to have fun.
Fun. Okay.
You're supposed to have fun. You're supposed to, get as much pleasure, like I said, with the toys, get as much pleasure and acquisitions and material
As
stuff as you can out of life.
were you
And
were
that
you
was it.
happy with that? Was that satisfying?
No,
No.
I really wasn't. And I tried really hard. I worked really hard at it,
Mm.
at having a good time, and,
You
appeared to
worked
succeed.
hard at work, or you worked hard at having fun, or
Both.
both?
Well,
Both.
but the having a good time much more than at work.
Right.
Um,
So
so in any case,
why weren't you happy with that? Like what was the feeling that you were feeling?
well, coming from, well, let's put it this way. At the time, I simply felt empty, right? But I had no
Mm-hmm.
idea why I was feeling empty.
Empty.
Um, and 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 I've later learned, that I've later learned why I felt so empty, and why I wasn't really happy. And the reason was very simple, which is that the only way that being happy is not about feeling good, it's about doing good. And
Mm-hmm.
not as, but truly,
That's a great
that
that's
a,
a great
a
sentence.
person a person is only truly happy inside when they've done good for other people and
So
done
true.
good in the world.
So what changed? Like how did you go from from this empty life, just seeking toys and just seeking fun, to a life of more meaning? What
Okay.
what changed? Like what sparked your
Okay.
interest?
Basically, that my whole life crashed, as happens
Mm.
to a lot of people.
Mm.
I got married, I had a son, I bought a house out on Long Island, um, and then that fell apart, and the marriage fell apart, and all of that stuff. And I was just like, I was just looking around. I didn't like
Mm.
really. There was nothing in particular that I was looking for. Um, so my story, I guess, is connected to newspapers. I never realized this at first. It was the ad in the New York Times that got me on that, and then I saw an ad in the Village Voice newspaper in New York, for a weekend in Crown Heights,
Mm.
and uh, and I had there's a backstory. All right, so let me give the backstory. One day, I'm walking down 47. I'm working at the Times, working on the national news desk at the Times. I'm walking down 47th Street in 46th 7th Street in Manhattan, and some kid comes up to me and says, "Are you Jewish?" And I say, "Yeah." And he said, "Did you put on tefillin today?" And I said, "Of course." lied. I hadn't put on tefillin since my bar mitzvah, so but I'm not going to admit that I didn't put on tefillin.
Right.
So he said, oh, okay, great. And he gave me a flyer with, for Brengen, with a picture of the Rebbe. There's this famous black and white picture of the Rebbe with his head is sort of like in an angle. And I loved the picture. I had no idea where it was. I loved the picture. I thought it was so cool. And I brought it back to me.
Why did you think it was so cool? Like, what did you like about it?
It just resonated with
something
this is
inside.
this is a really cute guy. This is like, I don't know. It was like this, cool. It was totally positive. So we used to have at our desks these plexiglass stuff. At that time, you smoked at your desk. Literally, people drank at their desk. There was everything. So I had this plexiglass with all this sort of nicotine stains on it, and under it we would have like phone numbers and things like that. There wasn't email yet. There weren't none of that, right? So I put the Rebbe's picture under my glass, right? And just because, and people came over and said, "Who's the rabbi?" And I said, "I don't know. Looks like a cool guy." And so that thing was like under my desk for at least a year. Wow. Okay. So I answered. So I saw the ad in the Village Voice, and I said, "Okay, I need something different." My ex-wife and I had split up, and I needed some kind of, I figured something spiritual, something Jewish, something different. Because
did you realize that the two groups were connected? Like when you saw that ad? No, you didn't realize that was with the Rebbe at all. You just had the picture.
Exactly. And so I went, and I was so it was for a Shabbaton weekend, a Pagisha weekend in Crown Heights, and I was so like out of it Jewishly. Didn't even occur to me that I should bring a yarmulke. I didn't own a yarmulke, right? Or even occur to me that I should need one if I'm going with, to a weekend like this. So they saw me without a yarmulke. Somebody handed me a yarmulke. And I stayed with a family in Crown Heights, and I really liked them. I just really felt, I was sleeping literally on a sofa in the living room. Why? But that's where I was. But it was like such a cute family, and like I was just they were really nice people. And I began and met some other people that weekend who were people like me, sort of like, I'll call it Bali Chuba, but sort of college educated, just like people like that who had adopted this lifestyle. And I was very, very curious. So the next day was a Farbrengen, and Rabbi Shmuel, who was a very, very well-known rabbi in London, was at the Pagisha. He was one of the participants. And he basically took me personally under his wing. And he brought me, so we all went, everybody who was there, probably about close to 100 people on the weekend, I think. And we all went to the Farbrengen together. And guess who was there? The guy from under my desk.
Wow.
Wow. And, well, I actually knew that the night before because I saw the Rebbe's picture on the wall. But in any case, it was like really great. Wow, okay, you're right.
That must have been a big surprise. Wow.
And it was really, it was great. It was great to see them. And Rabbi Lou was very, he was saying, look, there's a lot of like crowd dynamics going on here. So like be prepared for it and don't, just take it in.
Take it all in.
And you're right. Just take it in, and the fact that look, so this was Shabbos Parshat Shmos in Mem Vav, which is 1986, and I just and this had a lot to do with it. So when I saw the Rebbe, I had, again, having worked for the New York Times at this point, I guess for about 15 years. Yeah, it was 15 years at this point. I had known a lot of people, and I'd known a lot of leaders. I'd known a lot of political leaders. I kind of hobnobbed with, and the Rebbe was. Subjectively, I felt that here I'm in the presence of a human being of a different order. Now, this was not because anybody told me about this. This was not because of any. It was just something that I internally perceived. Okay. That something that friends of mine who had like been to India, told me, would come back, and people would sometimes come back and say, man, it was like unbelievable. I just like was with this holy man,
Hmm.
you know, and these are people I respected and I believed them. I didn't have a great desire to like travel to India and meet a holy man myself, but I knew that, I believed that that's what they experienced. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I experienced in the Rebbe, that for the first time in my life, that I was in the presence of a truly holy individual, whatever that meant,
Right.
and um, that was something. But there was also about the Rebbe. I also experienced a real kind of grandfatherliness. I mean, on a very personal level,
Mm-hmm.
a real warmth. Just like it's not just like this standoffish guru kind of thing. Quite the opposite. Just but a rabbi, I mean, a real rabbi, and and there was a point where you made l'chaims with the Rebbe, and I made a l'chaim, and the Rebbe looked straight at me and gave me this big smile, and this really big, like instant smile, and I felt like I put my finger in an electric socket. I mean, it was like
Yeah.
really, it was just. I'm just being honest. This was like, again, nobody had prepped me for this or anything like that. It was just what I experienced. And I was just like it's the whole experience just very, very much moved me that this is very much something that I want to find out more about.
So, how did you get to Chabad.org, and what inspires you today?
Okay, so how did I get to Chabad.org? Um, I uh, I retired. I retired from the Times after 35 years there, and it sort of worked out that it was just right to do. And I was immediately recruited to work at Yeshiva University as deputy communications director and editor in chief for the university, and it was there for about a year, and just my wife said to me, "You want to go to Israel?"
So
And
now, so hold on. You're now remarried. You're married,
now remarried, right? Now remarried.
living an observant life, a Hasidic life.
living and observing, living right, living. I mean, how much did you want to fast forward? Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
so yeah. So from within, it was interesting because from that first weekend, things moved very. Let's go back a little bit. Things moved very, very fast. Right.
Right.
I decided, okay, after let me move in. Let me move into the neighborhood. I'm not religious. I don't believe in God or anything like that. But let me be like a cultural anthropologist. Like the only way
Mm-hmm.
he's going to understand the natives is by putting the ring in his nose and banging on the drum, along
Right.
with everybody else. So let me
Right.
let me do that. And then I said, okay, well, this is really something that I want. And then I said, well, okay, maybe I'll get married. And then I ended up meeting my wife, who now we're married for 35 years. And
She's lovely. I know her. She's lovely. I know her from Toronto.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
your father, she looked me well, was Masada Kedushin at our
Oh
wedding.
wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was like just So and then we started. We moved to Crown Heights, dragged her down from a nice suburb in Toronto to
Right.
Crown Heights, era days, and. Anyway, so we built a Jewish home. We lived in Crown Heights for about 4 or 5 years till 1992, and then we moved to the Muncie area, and raised a family there. My career proceeded, and then I retired from the Times and had a nice pension and severance and all of that stuff, and a nice job was given University, but then decided, my wife said, "Do you want to go to Israel?" Our kids
Mm.
were all out of the house at different points at different schools. My son was in a yeshiva in Minnesota. My younger daughter was in seminary in Sfat. So we said, "Okay, we'll go to Israel for a year."
Mm.
Um, and so we moved here, and it was good. It was financially rocky. We built our home. I ended up having to work again. I thought I was going to be able to be retired, and then after I built my place, and that was no longer
Mm.
no longer possible. And doing different things, and um, I started to work for JLI, Actually, I'd been working that before we came here, and I founded their Torah studies program where we created weekly classes for Chabad rabbis around the world. I did that for about 4 years, and did other JLI courses, and then sort of that that ran out, and started doing consulting work. And one day somebody called me and said, would you like to, I was doing communications consulting, and doing executive communications consulting. And I got a call from somebody saying, there's a certain rabbi in the United States who's in a bit of a fix, and we need some kind of PR writing work done. Mm-hmm. And ended up working with some of the people who run Chabad.org. And after a few months, they called and they said, would you like to come work for us? And I said, yeah, as long as I can work from right here.
So tell us a little about what you do now for Chabad.org. What is your position?
My main, well, a number of things that I do. My main job is I'm news editor, which we publish hundreds of news stories a year about Chabad, Lubavitch, Shluchim, and centralized organizations, and the good works that they do throughout the course of the year. We actually just won 4 American Jewish Press Association Simon Rockower Awards for Excellence in Journalism, which for 2022. That was just announced a couple of weeks ago. So we do a lot of good work. We do serious journalism. That's my background. And it was something that I tried to bring to Chabad.org, that not just simply like rewriting press releases, but actually having engaging stories that really motivate people, that motivate them to want to participate more in Chabad, and be influenced in a positive way by Chabad. And the whole thing about, going to Chabad centers, learning Hasidus, attending events, doing all of these things because of their, what they read.
Can you give us some teaching from the Rebbe that inspires you, that keeps you, that you feel like something that you learned from the Rebbe that still is with you every day or on a regular basis?
Yes. 2 things. One is pretty usual, and one is not so usual in my experience. The first thing is the Rebbe taught and say, "Trach good and sein good." Think good, and it will be good. The whole idea of having a consistently positive vision, that no matter what's going on, that just to know in your heart of hearts that it's good, that the outcome is good, and it will be revealed as good at some point, and to just don't worry, just do, it's okay, but you have to think good. That's your job. That's the, what we call the avoda. That's the service. That's the work. It's the actually think good, and it's really hard work. But when you do, boy, does it pay off, right, on a personal level. The other thing is when I was living in Crown Heights, people talk about all these different mitzvahs that the Rebbe came up with, and the importance of them. There's one that is publicized less than most, but which has had the most important impact on me, which was this whole idea of asay lecha rav, that a person should have a mashpia, a person should have a spiritual guide who you consult, who you talk to, that you're not just it's not just all happening in your head, but somebody who's a spiritual person who, and it's different. It's not like a psychiatrist or or just a plain friend or a therapist or anything like that. It's a rabbi or a rebbitzin or something like that. That who really understands Judaism, who understands Hasidic philosophy, who understands the teachings of the Rebbe and it lives them, and who you can go to without judgment, where they're not judging you, they're not, whatever you say, it's like, well, here's my advice, and get that advice. And that has been a key to whatever success I've experienced in life on any level.
So
is the fact that
you speak to your mentor, your spiritual mentor, your mashpia, regularly, and you've seen a difference. Interesting. Yeah. Wow.
Of different parts of my life. Yes, absolutely. Every day, all the time. I don't do anything without asking. Wow. I don't. Because left to my own devices. And,
so the young.
Seriously, I mean, there's a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. So the young Yaakov, who, in his 20s, who was looking for that connection and that meaning in life, would you say you found it?
Oh, totally. You see, that's the whole thing. That I'm not necessarily in love with every aspect of Torah Judaism all the time, but I'm absolutely convinced that particularly, Torah Judaism, Halacha, and Chassidus is like the answer. They're that it really is, in my opinion, it really, really is. It's just my subjective feeling, understanding that, we didn't go into it, but I'm pretty familiar with a lot of other spiritual paths, and I made it my business to be spiritual, to be understanding of other spiritual paths, because in a whole other thing, I counsel people who are involved in other spiritual paths, and to me, it's
And what do you feel it gives you that Torah Judaism, Chassidus gives you that those other paths did not?
That threefold connection, a real connection to God, a real connection on a very positive way to nature, to people, and to me, to the real authentic Yaakov that's inside, and that just needs to be revealed.
Wow. Beautiful. Okay. Yaakov, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for giving us a little glimpse behind the name, Yaakov Ort. When people see your name on the news articles, they'll know who the man behind it is, and giving us a little glimpse about what pushes you every day to do what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us and for your contributions on Chabad.org.
It's been a pleasure.